question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Parasura Poromia.
Mr. Speaker, tika tu I runga te tui te miha te ia koutou, a me pakake e lus, koutou e noha tu I reire ngā whanaunga o te haupanga. Anui te mi, e kaha te koutou e taia tu I kone hei ronga te ki te kōrero nei. Kia koe te kauwhakahaere, e tautoko tia tu ngā kōrero o te honore tariana mō te ahu o tēnei whakahoki. Ko tēnei no wetahi o ngā tino pakanga e mahi tau reka te krauna ki wetahi o ngā iwi o Aotearoa. E mohi atu tātou mai te timata o te tae o te krauna I reira e pakanga atu rātou. E kahana ngā hoe I te mau pū, e rongo atu te iwi te hapu o Rongowhakaata ki te pakopako o te pū, I te mate e hinga atu ngā tamariki me wetahi o ngā wahine, me wetahi o ngā uri. E tino rere ke atu tēnei mahi I rochi a Aotearoa. Nā te pai hoki, kua tai atu tātou I te wā, e whakatigatika tu pē wetahi o ngā hara ngā haki e mahi atu rātou ki te iwi hapu o ngā hapu o Rongowhakaata. Nō reire mihi koana ki a rātou, kore e kone. Mihi koana ki ngā mate I rochi a rātou. Mihi koana ki ngā mea pake ke pēra I a te dāsi, lina, rātou mā, e kore e kone. E tangi te ngākau mō rātou, e whawhai tonu atu, rōro atu mō te whakahoki o te tinana tanga o rātou o Rongowhakaata. O le tangi hoki te ngākau. Nui atu rātou e kore e kone. E ngani mō rātou e oro ana, e whawhai tonu atu e mihi koana ki o rātou. Mr. Chair, I want to reiterate what the chair of the Māori Select Committee said, the Honourable Tau Henare, and agree with the sentiments. Certainly I want to thank the Minister of Treaty Settlements for his effort. I want to remember and recognise Michael Cullen, who's not here, and Honourable Tariana Turi for her points of fact in relation to this apology. The Māori Affairs Select Committee has put a lot of effort into working through this. At times it's been complicated, but certainly we've got to what I believe is a good final end point, both for Rongowhakaata and the uri o te kōti Rukirangi. I wanted to inform Mr. Tau Henare, the chair of the Māori Affairs Select Committee, that the illustrious Trevor Mallard actually played a role as chair of the Māori Affairs Committee one time, and I found that quite amazing. But I do want to recognise my colleague Trevor Mallard for being being the chair of the Māori Affairs. Kia ora tātou. But on a more serious note, congratulations and thanks need to go to Willie Te Aho, Stanley Pato, Mikla Whaitiri, Jody Wiley, Lewis Moyo, Maeva and Peter Moyo, and a whole lot of other groups of people who have been involved in getting to this final point. You know, there is a lot of history in this country about the tensions between the Crown and people. For me, this is at the top of the tree in relation to the dastardly deeds enacted by the government on a people. The slaughtering in Ngātapa, the Wairanga Hika battles were just so imbalanced, unfair and nasty that it is an honour to be here to try and put some of that right, because some of it will never be put right. But it's, again, with Rongowhakaata being who they are, humble enough and keen enough to move on with life, have worked hard to get to this important point. And the bill does record apologies to Rongowhakaata and Ngā Uri o Te Kōti or Rikirangi for the historical acts. And as the previous speaker said, it was amazing that they were sent to Chatham Islands. They were jailed and chained actually while they were in jail. And that they escaped certainly shows the tenacity and energy of Rongowhakaata people. And as one escape we should applaud. And we need to remember that prior to 1865, Rongowhakaata had full control over their lands and resources and were participating successfully in the New Zealand economy. The Crown used military force in Tūranga in November 1865 when there was no need to do so, and the Crown did not pursue all reasonable possibilities for preserving peace. They actually incited the reactions, not just from the iwi, but amongst the soldiers. The Crown's attack on Rongowhakaata, whose occupants included women and children, were unwarranted and unjust, caused severe and long-term prejudice. Rongowhakaata and breached the Treaty of Waitangi and its principles. It more than breached the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, it breached the basic fundamentals in the sense of human nature. It was about one people trying to slaughter another people. And that certainly, for me, is important to state. Not to overexcite the past, but to ensure that it is stated on behalf of all of those people who are not here today. Because I've been privileged enough to sit in Ui, in Manatuka, in Muriwai, and listen to old people who've had one thing on their mind about putting this right. People who are not here now, like Darcy, like Henny, all of those people. And they were serious about this, and they kept on going and kept on going, and they kept on passing away. And those who live now as Rongowhakaata need to be encouraged that they embellish not just that commitment by those elders, but what they want to do going forward. And the Minister and co and officials need to be commended for their partner in this present day. It is nothing that the Crown should be proud about in this. The slaughter and the battles in the cliffs in Ngātapa, the purposeful chasing of children and women was just outrageous. The Crown acknowledges the indefinite detention in the harsh lands and certainly understands about the unwarranted hardships enacted at this stage on those people. And I think the returning, and one of the key aspects of Te Hauki Tūranga, the whare that's been in Te Papa, again that they have shared with the nation, international visitors, is time to go home is a good time. I would ask the Minister, as I mentioned before, that in relation to moving it and the cost and resourcing be put behind it, and that it is serious cost. It won't be simple and it won't be straightforward. And not to sign the settlement off and then say, well, it's up to you now. Because that's what happened when a lot of the incorporated lands were given back. People jumped at it, took it, then all of a sudden they had to pay debts that were left on them, and they couldn't afford it, and they ended up going back into debt. And I want to say that seriously about this whare. It is important to their people. It does epitomise those strengths of Rukupo, of one of the great carvers in this country, and it's something that we must preserve because it is a living connection with the past and shows their certain adeptness in relation to preserving who they were and who they are. And Mr. Speaker, the summary executions at Ngātapa by Crown forces in January certainly epitomises this whole gory history. But it has to be recognised that the Crown has a parcel of allocations, including the transfer of 8 cultural sites, returning to Hauki Tūranga ki Rongowhakaata, relationships redressed, including protocols with Ministers for Culture and Heritage, the Minister of Conservation, the Minister of Energy and Resources, and the Minister of Fisheries. And I again, Minister, say what I've said to you 6 times, but ever so much more with this iwi, because at the end of the day, they need all the support to correct and to build their capacity, both economically and culturally. And too many times we see government agents saying, yep, we're into this, and they don't do it. Dare I mention whānau ora and whatever else, as great as it going and the effort by Minister Turia. So I want to say that about this. Let's not just speak to this and not do what needs to be done, and ensure that you keep your beady eye on it, because you're pretty good. And make sure you've got your glasses on when you're watching it. There's 22.24 million redress for ngā uri o te kōti rikirangi, and that's something that Peter and Mavis Moore need to be really commended on, that they have stood up, that their tipuna is being recognised in the sense that they've chosen to recognise, and certainly I wish them well. So, Minister, in closing, I want to encourage you. You watch those ministries. You make sure that the added resources are put up behind us, because it's too easy for us to sign off and forget about them. And they've got fisheries issues, they've got conservation issues, they've got all of those things. And I think out of all the dastardly deeds that members of the Crown enacted on iwi around the country, this is one of the worst. And I'm not saying because I live not too far away from it. It is a fact. It is a real important fact that Rongowhakaata have been treated like nothing on this planet. And I want to commend you for being courageous enough
the honourable member
to make sure that it's finished. And I want to thank the Speaker for thanking me.
The Honourable Christopher Finlinson.
I just want to make a brief contribution picking up what